Hello everybody, Danny TCV, the Criminal Violin here. Welcome to CHATTERBOX, episode 12. Today I want to talk about a topic that is obviously going to be considered very sensitive, I would think. I don't know. And that is the topic of murder. Murder. Yeah, about that. I'm going to kill all of you. No. The reason why I want to talk about that actually is because today it just feels like a good day to be able to talk about it, be clear, and not have to worry too much about just a lot of the things that I feel like I would have to worry about, which is all the branching out and all the other stuff. I feel like I can be really, really properly direct today without getting over the top and start going on for 6 hours. So today, with that clarity, I would like to speak about the topic. And I'm sure you can tell by the title, one of the things I'm going to touch on, in fact, one of the heavy emphases I'm going to, or emphases, anyway, I'm going to put on talking about it, which is one of the biggest, I would say the biggest exception, hypocritical exception specifically, that we always seem to give to everybody else and to ourselves even, depending on who is in this situation. And that is when it comes down to war. So if you're part of an armed forces of any kind. And this is, especially in the US, this is a huge thing that gets me, like, people want to argue with me, chew me out, spit me out, just tear me apart, all this other stuff for it, because this nation is so filled to the brink with heavy nationalism and patriotism, which really is complacency, but then that's a different kind of topic. One of the biggest, in fact, I would say the biggest exception that people apply to other people and to themselves oftentimes, that's very hypocritical with this whole, it's not murder, even though it is with armed forces, obviously specifically the ones that are out in the quote-unquote field, as in the ones that are conscripted to be the mercenaries, so be out there killing for the government's agenda. With that said, the killing, and this was brought up by another YouTuber who, by the way, he actually has had 2 years of military experience. However, it was in Estonia, not in the US. That's Artur Ruri. Or I can't remember exactly that last name. I'm sorry. I would say it right if I remembered it, but I already forgot somehow. Like, just the letters on the end of it are... I'm seeing them scrambled in my head because of dyslexia, so my bad. Anyway, I watched a video that he posted today that was looking at war crimes of the U.S., and it got me thinking about this and got me wanting to do a little bit of a shorter Chatterbox episode on it, talking about the whole, how we kind of define murder in a really weird way with all these exceptions. And with that video, he mentions multiple times, because obviously he feels it's very important to point that out to people, for people to realize and recognize and believe, come to see these things for the reality of what it really is. And that is that in war, it's so intensely confusing as to try to define what constitutes murder versus just simply a consequence of battle, basically. So just, something you would do in war. And so it just got me thinking about this topic. And I'm like, yeah, but then technically anybody in the armed forces is automatically a murderer, specifically if they're in the field. And then anybody who's not in the field and they're instead, in an office somewhere, on a base somewhere, they're, doing the intelligence, they're doing the surveillance, they're doing the commands and all this other stuff. The thing is with them is that it's just this clusterfuck for me to try and process, because it's like everybody always wants to give themselves this specialty little exception to the rule. When you look at the definition of murder in the dictionary, specifically the original definition, which still usually stands today as the thing that people talk about, the definition is so basic and simple. It literally is and defines as the intentional killing of another person. So if you intentionally and knowingly go out to kill somebody and do kill that person, then you're automatically a murderer, because you've committed the action of murder. By definition, the action of murder, again, is the intentional killing of another person. Therefore, past tense, you've now committed that action, therefore you are now it. You are a murderer. But then obviously, if that's the case, why don't we apply that to armed forces? Why don't we apply that to military? Why don't we apply that to the police? Why don't we apply that to self-defense, people who commit self-defense via shooting to kill a home invader or something? Why don't we do that? Because then we'd actually be being honest with ourselves and each other and actually properly punishing people for actually intentionally killing somebody else, as in murdering somebody and thus being a murderer. Same with the death penalty, same with death row. When we happily say, kill that serial killer, kill that rapist, kill that pedophile, all we're doing is stooping to their level and becoming one of them. We're also doing something sick, twisted, sadistic. We're happily thinking that we're doing the right thing. We're doing such a good service to ourselves and everybody else out there in society at large because we're making ourselves safe by murdering somebody else who happened to murder other people or something like that. How fucked up is that? Like, that we have it intentionally, we twist things and contort them so far out from reality just so that we can apply an exception to ourselves and make ourselves believe that contortion as if it is actually the reality and as if it actually makes logical sense, which of course in this case it absolutely none of it makes a lick of sense. And obviously deep inside we know that because we intentionally created that twisted, contorted, delusional reality that we then choose to live in those circumstances, in these cases, where we're telling ourselves, no, it's okay, you did a good thing, you protected yourself, you protected your family, you protected your home, you protected your property, you protected your nation, you protected your freedoms, you protected democracy, you protected these other people, you saved these other people by what? Killing a whole slew of other people, by causing mass decimation of life because you took an oath into your nation to protect your freedom and democracy and fight tyranny with more tyranny? Like, what? So, in order to fight this mass decimation of life, we contort it so that we say, well, then we need to fight that mass decimation of life with mass decimation of life. We need to fight that nation's tyranny with our own nation's tyranny against their tyranny. That's literally all we're doing in war, which then, again, I could get into that other subject. And considering I've only been going on for, well, technically less than 12 minutes on this topic, I could easily just jump into that and make this like a 30-minute episode. And I guess I will. So, yeah, when it comes down to that stuff, it just doesn't make any sense either. For basically the same common sense, bare bone, basic, logical reasons. We're out here, in the military, in the armed forces, every nation's armed forces, they are taking an oath to quote unquote protect their country, protect their sovereignty, protect their freedoms, protect their people, protect themselves, protect their families, protect whatever it is, by going out into the field and killing people, or staying on a base at home in your fatigues and going out and commanding where they're going to go to use what type of weaponry to then go and cause what level of decimation of life wherever it is that they're going to do that. Direct them to a group of quote-unquote enemies, quote-unquote bad people that they need to then quote-unquote execute, as in kill, or do away with, or end, or dispatch of, or whatever the stupid term you're going to use for it. Neutralize is the one that they usually use with that shit. Neutralize the enemies, neutralize the combatants, neutralize the rebels. It's just like, what the fuck? What the fuck are we doing? Having the audacity to say we're intelligent, we're smart, we use our brains correctly. We have such great big brain power. We have such intelligence. We have such superiority over all other living species. Yet we're the only ones who go out and take childhood temper tantrums to such an extravagant level with, instead of words and fists and tears, instead guns and mortars and bombs and missiles and gases and fire and nuclear weaponry and all tanks and Bearcats and all this other shit, MPVs and all this other shit, all because, fighter jets and all this other stuff. Why? Because a nation's going to throw a temper tantrum about the fact that another nation doesn't share their ideologies, doesn't share their beliefs, doesn't want to do what they told them to do, when it's not even their fucking business because it's not even their nation. Yet you're like, you have to let us control your resources, as in oil. Hello, USA. Or, hey, you have to let us control your copper. Also, USA. And Chile definitely has a history with that they know of. Back into the 60s and 70s with Allende, and then the big genocide that happened after the assassination of Allende by the U.S. military. Hello. Because they were bitter about Allende taking away all these U.S. oligarchy members, all these big, rich, aristocratic level bastards of the U.S. that controlled and owned these companies and thus controlled the resources in Chile, which the resources that they were controlling and the companies they own were mining companies that were there for the copper, because for some reason the U.S. has that obsession not just with oil but with copper, then yeah, and they decided were willing to commit a mass genocide there because fuck it, they had to control that nation's resources, as in the copper-based resources of their nation, which apparently they still have a lot of copper there. Fun times. Why do you think Venezuela's going to shit? Oil. Why do you think? And they actually apparently have a fair amount of copper there too, but it's mainly the oil that they're after, of course. Just like anywhere in the Middle East, it's always the oil. Libya, because of the oil, although now Libya's most of their oil has been depleted because that's what humans do. They're parasites. We exploit to the last drop, and we just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Even though we know in the end we're going to go extinct, we're obsessed with exploiting and everything and just constantly doing it to no end and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Even if we hit the brick wall a billion times, like, we know we got to keep going there. We got to keep going there. We got to keep doing this. We got to keep doing this. It's got to be the same. It's got to be the same. It's got to be the same. You know, and it's like, we're such fucked up creatures, but then that's also a different topic. So, point being, that's what the nations are out there doing. That's what war really is. It's a adult rendition of a fucked up temper tantrum and trying to get petty amounts of revenge on somebody for not doing what you commanded them to do, or not giving your government, your nation, the power that they wanted in their country, or whatever the fuck it is. It's always some fucked up stupid thing. They don't share the same ideology. They aren't willing to agree with each other. They aren't willing to give each other a certain amount of their economy or their resources, or, you know, how about 9/11? Oh, conveniently, suddenly, a week before 9/11 happens, the U.S. loses track of $8 trillion at complete fucking random. To this day, they can't figure out where the fuck it is. And they're suddenly really mad at Iran and Iraq. Why? Oh, right, because if you look just before that week where they lost track of $8 trillion, they still can't locate what happened to it to this day. Iraq and Iran switched from the US dollar in their oil trade to the euro, which made the US pissed off, and of course then lose track of $8 billion or $8 trillion at complete random, conveniently a week before 9/11 occurs. And then, like 3 weeks later, and they officially are in Iraq and Iran fighting a war, except they don't declare it until, what was it, like 2003 or some shit, so like 2 years later. Then they're like, we officially declared war on Iraq and Iran for weapons of mass destruction. Okay. The fuck? Now you're going to officially declare it, even though you actually were already committing war crimes and doing all this war shit in Iraq and Iran long before that, like 2 or 3 weeks after. I think it was about 3 weeks after 9/11 occurred. That's when you actually sent all these troops there and started going to war with them. But, got to manipulate the story, as always. It's just like, what the fuck? Either way, the point being there is that's literally how all that shit went down. Is because the U.S. got super fucking pissed off because they didn't get what they wanted. They weren't getting what they demanded. And therefore, they had to go and show them who's boss, show them superiority. It's like, fuck you. What the fuck? You know how many massive amounts of people have died over there? Let alone did, because of the fact that adult temper tantrum had to be thrown. And so they just had to go and start beating the living shit out of them with war, murder, mass decimation of life. It's like, most of Syria is completely decimated now. It's just rubble. Why? Because that's all war is the mass decimation of life. That's literally all it is. And I say mass decimation of life because that's the best possible term you could give it. It's the most accurate because not only are you supposed to be killing as many people as you can, including civilians, but on top of it, you're supposed to not just get as many high a number as you can of deaths that you've caused, but you're also supposed to cause as much damage and havoc as you can onto their infrastructures, their buildings, their cities, their roads, their networks, their resources, their companies, their everything. So if you can destroy as much of their buildings as possible, doesn't matter if it's civilian or not, and their companies as much as you can or not, and their oil fields or whatever, their mines or whatever it is that is their main source of economy, and then you can destroy their roads so that they don't really have a chance to escape or go or get out or do anything to get anywhere or around, and decimate all the vehicles you can, because that way, again, they really don't have anywhere to, or any way to get anywhere without being mowed, which is what they want, because then it makes it easier to then pick off people, and this raise that number of deaths and casualties you've caused, which then leads to official victory of a war to a country, officially getting the like a stupid fucking competition in game. That's all it really comes down to, is a temper tantrum turned into a competitive game where whatever country causes the most mass decimation of life wins. It's considered the winner of the war, and they get to do what they want with that country. And it's like, the fuck? And how in the fuck is that not considered murder? What's worse is it's officially considered premeditated murder. By the law books around the world, it's premeditated murder. Because you're planning the decimation of life. You're planning to kill all these people. You're planning to do that when you're part of the military. Guess what? You're a fucking murderer at that point. And not only that, you're the worst kind of murderer. By law, it's officially considered and looked down on as the worst form of murder and murderer and killer you could possibly be. All around the world, that's the case, not just here in the US. Premeditated murderers are considered the most sadistic, twisted, and worse, and most high risk of committing more murders of all the groups. And for damn good reason, and obvious reasons. But again, herein lies that hypocritical exception, that one of the main ones, if not the biggest one, that everybody around the world just loves to give themselves and each other. Because they're saving our lives. They're keeping our freedom safe. They're allowing us to keep living our lives freely. They're allowing us to stay a sovereign nation. They're allowing us to da-da-da. All the bullshit they possibly can come up with, that's what they preach. They echo what their government tells them. Their government is the one who conscripts them to become those mercenaries you call armed forces. That's all you are. It's just a rebranded mercenary band is all militaries are, is all armed forces are. They're just rebranded. They're just renamed, rebranded military bands or mercenary bands, and the mercenary bands that are we call military just so happen to, instead of like back in the day, they were paid in one lump sum after they completed their jobs. Instead, they're paid like the what we would call wages nowadays that they didn't have necessarily back then. Some mercenary groups, they didn't even get paid. They were just expected to by the nobility and the royalty, so the monarchs, to do their jobs, which was to go out and do the dirty work for, well, the emperor, the king, or the queen, or whatever else. In this case, armed forces are just the modern day version of that. They're just completely rebranded. That's all they are. They're just rebranded mercenary groups. That's what they are. So congratulations, if you're an armed forces member, you're a merc. How does it feel? Like, and yeah, that means you're expendable. They don't care about you, you know? Plus, you take the rap. Most of the time, the countries and the leaders of the country specifically do not take it. Instead, it's the actual people who do the dirty work, the killing for them. That's the ones who take typically the rap. And of course, specifically, they're the ones who have to go through all the suffering and the trauma and the PTSD and all this shit. And that's the arrogant part of the governments, where they're just like, yeah, exactly. We don't have to worry about any of that shit. We don't even have to pay attention or look at any of the video or footage or anything if we don't want to. That's the best part. All we do is we push the buttons and they do as we say. Like Mataton slaves. They do as they're told. It's like that's what they rely on when you're a merc, when you're a military member. They rely on you to be subservient to your command. And that's why it's so, one of the countless reasons why armed forces are so fucked up in the first place, and why you have to be a fucked up individual in order to actually be willing to take pride in it, let alone become a part of one. because you have to be really fucking willfully stupid and blind to reality in order to happily go ahead and be like, yeah, I'm serving my country. I'm such a good boy or girl. No, you're not. And you know you're not. But you got to make yourself desensitized, blind, and deaf to reality, and effectively make yourself into a killing machine just because that's your job. You're told to do that. Either that, or you have to desensitize yourself and all that stuff too, but you have to stay back home and you have to do the surveillance, or you have to send the commands, or you have to tell the general of each group where the path they need to take to get to where it is, or where the threats are, or where the attack zone is, where this is at, where that's at, you know. And it's like you still have to desensitize yourself entirely and blind yourself willingly and all this stuff and just be subservient. You like literally you willingly have to reprogram yourself to be as if you're just this robot that just only does what you're told. Because obviously if you deviate from what you're commanded to do, you get harshly punished. And typically you can even get yourself killed because you're considered a traitor at that point. Again, part of the fucked up thing of it, it's fearmonger based where, God forbid, if you decide to be autonomous and you decide to say, no, you know what, this is fucked up. I'm not going to take part in this anymore. Guess what happens? You're now a traitor. You're probably going to get killed. That's why most people would never dare admit any of that, because they know they're probably going to get killed. And even if it's after they've been discharged, they're still not allowed to talk about it. So that's why you almost never hear about it. And then when you do, most of the time, those are the ones, especially if they have any realm of broader influence than just in their own little group, they're made to quote unquote disappear. In other words, they've been killed because you don't talk about what it really is like, because that would discourage people from being willing to take part in that, to be willing to be subservient little cogs in the system to go out and do the dirty work for your government. And it's like the fact that people don't want to see that obvious reality, that's as blatant as can be. You know, it's basically already, you know, the outer layer of your eyeballs than you know. So I don't understand how people don't see that, but it's just like, okay, sure, right. I forgot you're intentionally choosing to be dumb and blind and subservient, and it's really fucked up and sad. But that's just one of the ways. And obviously I mentioned it a little bit earlier near the beginning. Another way, there's a hypocritical exception that we apply to ourselves and each other all the time when it comes down to murder. And again, it's like the armed forces where we glorify murder. We glorify murder again with the death penalty. It's another one of those hypocritical exceptions where we damn well know that it's murder that we're committing onto these serial killers, these rapists, these pedophiles, whatever they are. And we're so fucking happy with ourselves. We're so proud of ourselves. We're so happy about it. We're so thrilled. We're so excited. We're so grateful that we caught these people and we're going to kill them now. We're going to end their life because they're so evil. And that makes our society so much safer. We're good people for killing these people who killed other people. Like, what the fuck? You damn well know that makes no fucking logical sense, so fuck you. Like, what? No. That's another way that we're super fucking hypocritical and we glorify murder because we're happily glorifying and putting on a pedestal the death penalty. The killing of killers. The killing of other people who are fucked up. And it proves that we ourselves are that fucked up. We're just as fucked up as they are, just in a different light, in a different way. We are just as fucked up as they are because we're also glorifying killing people. We even glorify maiming them because they're bad people. What the fuck? Like, why are we so fucking willing to be so fucked up and screwed up in the head? I don't get it. We're so willing and thrilled to be so intensely hypocritical and intentionally make ourselves believe our own self-created delusions. I don't fucking understand. This is one of those things where it's one of those self-created delusions that we're so thrilled to put up on a pedestal, glorify, and think we're doing the right thing, we're great people, and this is an intelligent decision. This is a good idea. This is great. This is whatever. And it's like, what? You know how fucked up you have to be to actually think that that's a good thing and to believe in that delusion, or even to be willing to create that delusion for yourself to believe in. Like, You know, it's so fucking sad. Of course, that goes into the whole societal expectation of you got to follow the crowd. You got to do whatever everybody else does, or else you're not normal. And then you start getting outcast, and you start getting hated, and you start getting torn apart, and you start getting, you know, da 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 da. You start getting invalidated, everything else, because you're just wrong unless you believe what everybody else does. And you do what everybody else does. You see things the way everybody else does, and da 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 da. You know, and it's like, what the fuck, you know? And I could go on and on about the death penalty, where it's just like, people are always like, well, then what else are we supposed to do? It's like, obviously, there's the choice of life imprisonment. You just put them in a maximum security prison where they're perpetually monitored 24/7, 365. They have extreme restrictions on their life and their capabilities and where they can go, what they can do, when, where, and how. And that they're pretty much kept almost exclusively solitary. The only way they're not, obviously, is all the guards and stuff that are watching them and monitoring them and testing them and everything. Otherwise, yeah, they're solitary. But they're not going to get up in solitary confinement, but they are allowed next to nothing. And they're just in their maximum security prison cell, constantly monitored 24/7, 365 by the best of the best security teams and psychiatric people and all everything else. And they're just maintained there for the rest of their lives. You know, that's it. If there's going to be any specifically made prisons or jails or whatever else, in this case prisons or pens, preferably penitentiaries, that's exactly what should be made specific, is exclusively for these kind of high profile people. The serial killers, the serial pedophiles, the serial rapists, whatever, those are the ones that need to be in those specific penitentiaries where they're just there. It's exclusively for these people that are going to be locked up for the entirety of their lives. And there's no allowance, no possibility to have a court date, to be able to renegotiate, to be able to do anything. Even if they turn out to be the best of behavior, and even if they do get rehabilitated, they're never allowed to be released. They always have to be there for the rest of their lives. That's the obvious solution. Life imprisonment for these people. Instead of a death penalty, don't fucking kill them and stoop their level. Don't be hypocritical like that. Keep them in prison for life. In penitentiaries for life. No exceptions, no questions, no rules, nothing. No adaptability, no maneuverability, absolutely nothing. No negotiability, absolutely nothing's allowed. You absolutely have to keep them there. And nobody can ever do anything about it. And they're just there into perpetuity until they die. In a maximum security place where they're monitored 24/7. That's the obvious choice here. So that's my answer to all those people like, well, what do you do with them? That's obviously what you fucking do. Like, don't act like that's not a possibility. Don't act like you don't know that there's life imprisonment, maximum security, 24/7 monitoring. Like, you know there's already that all over the place. So don't pretend like that's not an option. You're like, but they could escape. It's like, yeah, anybody can fucking escape. The likelihood is that they'd escape no matter how intelligent of a schemer they are and a schmoozer and everything else is next to nothing in those specialized prisons and penitentiaries. Next to absolutely nothing. And we guaranteed that they would know that they're making an escape no matter what. And they would probably actually end up being killed at that point anyway. Because they're that high profile that if they were to end up going out there, well, that's the way the U.S. teaches things. They teach to shoot to kill when lives are potentially in danger. So therefore, obviously, that's exactly what they would do. They would go out and they would kill them. So then you get what you want anyway. But point being, you know, that's the obvious solution. In my opinion, personally, and I know it's, you know, most people don't feel this way or believe the same thing, but in my personal opinion, I sincerely believe that nobody, no matter how horrible they are, deserves to die. Not a soul deserves to be killed. Not a soul deserves to die just because of the fact that they're intensely fucked up in the head. And then they don't seem to have a heart or anything like that. Like, no. No matter how fucked, sick, twisted, screwed up, and sadistic they are, doesn't, you know, and unrehabilitatable, does not mean they should be killed. No matter how many people they've slaughtered, does not mean that they should be slaughtered. It just doesn't make any sense. Put them in prison, penitentiary specifically, maximum security for life, with highly specialized security systems, guards, monitoring, you know, systems and people, psychiatrists, everything like that, so that they are constantly monitored 24/7, no exceptions, no matter what, for the rest of their lives. That's obvious how that should work, in my personal opinion. Because nobody deserves to die. But it's just like, I don't know. It's just one of these things where it's another one of those stupid hypocritical exceptions that everybody gives when it comes down to murder. And they glorify the murdering of these people because, well, they give themselves this hypocritical exception where they twist it and contort it in such a way to where they say, it's not murder. We're just killing them. Like, what? Like, listen to yourself when you say that. It's not murder. We're just killing them. How the fuck does that make any sense? That doesn't make any sense. You know that doesn't make any sense. There's not the slightest bit of logic in that. That's hypocrisy. It doesn't make any sense, and it makes you sound like the most dumb, brainless individual you've ever heard in your life. And you damn well know you feel that way when you listen to yourself. Because you know it doesn't make any sense to say, we're not murderers, we're not murdering them, we're just killing them. Duh. Like, really? Go fuck yourself. You're so fucking stupid. Like, God. Don't be such a hypocrite. Ugh. Anyway, so that be those topics at hand. Well, specifically the whole hypocritical exceptions to murder topics and murder in general. So yeah, it's just stupid. And I'll throw this in here as well because I'm pretty sure this is still the case here in Oregon. And a lot of actual native Oregonians don't seem to realize this, but in our state, I'm pretty sure it's always been that we pretty much have the opposite of stand your ground. So if you kill somebody in self-defense, you will get charged with murder. It doesn't matter if it's self-defense, you get charged with murder because you technically, well, by definition, that's exactly what murder is. You intentionally killed somebody to protect yourself. Now, it's always like, okay, you did do this in self-defense, so usually you get like half the sentence you would normally get. A very heavily reduced sentence like that you get, and with the good chance of renegotiation rather than next to none, because of the fact that they know it's in self-defense. So there's like a slight exception to that rule. And there's so many people that don't realize that. I actually have a really good friend who, he's very, very stand your ground, standoffish type of guy. Where like, if you touch my property and I don't know who you are, and I feel like my property and or my life and my items are under threat, I will not hesitate to shoot and kill you. Or stab you, whatever it is that he has to do at the time that he feels is best at the moment. And, of course, I personally am the opposite of that. I would rather be the pacifist and just be like, you know what? They're just fucking items, steal whatever the fuck you want. Either that, or I would try to be the guy who goes to, with element surprise, and go and try to disable the person, whether it's knocking them out or disabling their legs and or arms or whatever it is, in the best way it possibly could. And there's always a good chance that you could possibly pull that off. It's just you have to know what to do and be able to be situationally, fantastically aware at every moment in time in the process of it. Yeah, so he's one of those people, and I've told him multiple times that Oregon doesn't allow you to do that. Like, because if you do that, you still get charged with murder. Like, because it is technically murder, and they will charge you with that automatically because that's how our law system in the state works. You can't just go out killing somebody in self-defense, because if you do, you are going to get charged with murder. It's that simple. So if you want to go into a prison system and get charged with murder, then yeah, go ahead and stand your ground. But this isn't Florida. You can't just be George Zimmerman and say, well, he was wearing a hoodie and he was black and I was scared. I didn't know what was in his bag. I thought it was drugs. You know, fucking Skittles and Arizona iced tea, motherfucker. Like, that's how lenient the whole stand your ground shit is. Clearly, because he got fucking acquitted, even though everything was stacked against him. They're still like, but he said stand your ground, so technically that gets rid of everything, even all the evidence saying it was racial profiling. Well, all those things are irrelevant when, he tried to stand your ground off the bat. That's how stand your ground law works in Florida. Like, yeah, okay, great, good for you, you fucking pricks. But it's just like, here, we're like the opposite when it comes down to stand your ground. We don't have a stand your ground law, and you will get charged with murder if you kill somebody in self-defense. It's that simple. Like, we're the opposite of Florida in that sense. And, again, a lot of Native Oregonians don't seem to realize that. And I totally get that. And to me, that makes perfect sense, because in that case, our state so far has never been willing to be hypocritical about murder. They're like, no, that straight up, that's murder. That's literally by definition, that's murder. And our laws will obey the definition of the things that are against the law, in this case, murder. You are a murderer now. Congratulations, you're being tried as for murder because you just murdered somebody. And it's like, yeah, intent to kill. That's murder. and in self-defense situations, I could see the point for why people would shoot to kill, because it's far more likely that you're going to be able to kill somebody and get a kill shot in than you are to try and aim for like a limb or something that would disable the person. Like, obviously. So I do get that, but you are still a murderer. So you should be, in my personal opinion, charged with murder. Doesn't matter if it was self-defense or not. That's my personal opinion. To me, that makes perfect sense. And that's why I felt like I wanted to mention that, is because with our state, at least in that case, we stance with common sense and logic and the actual by-the-book definition and how murder is laid out and what it's defined as, and we want to stick to that. Whereas with a lot of other states in the country, they are the total opposite. They are happily, voluntarily hypocritical with their laws towards murder. Again, Florida is a perfect example of that, along with George Zimmerman killing Trayvon Martin via racial profiling, yet their stand your ground makes it so encompassing that it doesn't matter if it was really just based on racial profiling that this guy suddenly felt scared for his life and then decided to kill the dude. Like, no. You can be a paranoid schizophrenic and think that somebody was a killer clown and they're just about to axe you, even though they were just some random dude walking by, ignoring you, going about their life, carrying like a bag of, I don't know, Pringles or something from 7-Eleven down the street. And you could be, obviously that would be stand your ground in Florida. And it's so encompassing that you quite literally could potentially get away with that murder, because that's just how it works. There's like so much intentional, selective, hypocritical exceptions given to ourselves and each other all over the world, but especially in the US when it comes down to murder. And they glorify murder in a lot of different facets here, especially when it comes down to this whole self-defense and also death penalty and also, yes, military. I've never fucking understood that, because it is very hypocritical, and therefore making it mean that it's illogical. It doesn't make any sense. You're contradicting yourself, contradicting what murder is, and now you're also glorifying it on top of it. You're a fucked up person, I'm sorry. And you're dumb. You're willingly being incredibly brainlessly stupid and dumb. So, what the fuck is wrong with you, basically? And you need severe help. And it's like, apparently most, if not all, humanity needs that help because of that. And there's, of course, a billion other things that people give themselves this and each other this massively encompassing hypocritical set of exceptions, and that's glorification of whatever it is that normally everybody's like freaking out about and like, absolutely, this is the worst thing possible, except they do it in a different circumstance, but because they intentionally contorted it away from reality to whatever this is, so that they can give themselves that hypocritical exception of saying, this is great, this is a good thing, you protect yourself, whatever it is, then suddenly it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And it's totally not that, even though it definitely, blatantly, very clearly is. It's not just murder, it's a lot of different things. But this is the one thing I really wanted to touch on. And I've spoken about this off and on just a little bit here or there on like Twitter and other places before, just because it is a topic that's rather important to me. And I've always been interested yet irritated by how intentionally hypocritical human beings tend to be. So, without further ado, that is where I will end today's CHATTERBOX podcast. Now, I know this is, again, an episode that I think a lot of people, if it really gets very many views at all, a lot of people are going to strongly disagree with me on pretty much every butter to this. They're going to try and argue why it's not hypocritical and why it's not an exception, or the exception is a good thing but not hypocritical, or maybe they're going to argue that this hypocrisy is a good thing and this with the exceptions or whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of bitter people, a lot of angry people, a lot of offended people, a lot of insulted people, because there's always going to be that. But especially with the topic at hand, obviously that's going to be the case. Like I said, when you say the things that I do, like I have in this, when you admit that you believe certain things like I do in this, and on this topic especially, it just makes you the world's most popular shredding machine. They just want to shred you and shred you and shred you to no fucking end. Because you're just so wrong, and you're so offensive, and you're so ill-informed, and you're so this, and you're so that, and it's like, believe what you want, guys. Yeah, but I hope people gain some new perspectives from this. I hope people learned from this, perhaps, maybe, something, I don't know. And, yeah. I hope to see you guys in the next episode of Chatterbox, and I hope to also see you guys in whatever my next video may be. Stay safe, stay fluffy, have a great day, night, wherever you are, and I hope to see you guys whenever, as I just kind of said. See you guys later. Bye-bye.